Okay, now keeping the dacron clear, you want to spread a coating of it all the way along the back of the bow. Be reasonably thick with it, but it's just important that you get right to the edges. Okay, so making sure you've got it right to the edges, and again we're starting from the handle section here. So place one load on first, one amount first. Taking the dowel stick and just trying to flatten it out. Now you get some little knots that start to form, or little wrinkles in it. They're not too much of a problem, they're just a little bit unsightly, that's all. They shouldn't have too much of an effect on the bow. So initially just flattening it down, get right to the edges. You might use the smaller skewer here to just try and detangle it. It's not that necessary, but you can do it. Alright, so now place a bit of epoxy over this layer here, quite a generous amount. And then just smooth it all the way along. So you want to saturate all the fibers. Once you've got a good covering, now you can start to take a bit of care as to the edges. That is, you want to be able to get it to the edges, not coming off the sides too much. And if you flatten it down, it usually spreads out quite well. So on this side here, it's a little more dense on one side than the other. That's okay, we've still got another section to put on. Alright, so of what we've got left, we now want to put on maybe half of the remainder on there. So this forms the base for the next layer. Don't really want to have much of this left over, you want to use the whole amount. Now it's important to note that when you're spreading this down, always place the pressure down in one direction, don't go back and forward, or you'll start to get, it will crinkle up and it won't look so good. So placing that on top, and then flattening it down as before. Now you really want to place all the remainder now. Try and get it fairly evenly spread on here. You don't really want to waste any of this. It sets relatively quickly, so you don't have a lot of time to spare with this. It's not that forgiving in that respect. And once it starts to get too claggy, too thick, then you've got to wind it up at that point. So spreading it on nice and evenly, trying to get to the edges. A little bit of overhang isn't a problem, it's just a little bit unsightly, that's all. Right. So you can place a little bit of pressure to try and get it nice and smooth, nice and flat all the way to the ends. Okay, so now taking any of the last epoxy that you have, placing it on the end. Spread it nice and generously along there. And then taking one of your sears, you might want to use a bit of tape, but you don't have to. Actually, no, let's not do that. Get these cable ties just started initially. So the first couple of zzz, you get, there we go, one. And two. Right. Now placing it on the end, press it down nice and firmly, tighten it up. Try and get it nice and tight. Shouldn't be able to get it any tighter. Sorry. Right. Now you want to have it nice and flush there, so the bottom of the bow is flush with the back of the sear here. Next stage is very important. You have to make sure that the sear is approximately running down the length of the bow. Now this is an old self bow, so it was never completely straight anyway, but you want it to be such that it's rough, looking down like that, approximately approximately straight with the line of the bow. Okay, so final bit of tamping down with this epoxy. Get it nice and flat. See, it's starting to get a little bit tacky now. Get it nice into the edges. There we go. At this point, you can check from face on and see if it can be pushed a little more to the edges or not. Alright. And now taking your piece of tape, place it over the top. And flatten it down. This will get a nice finish, and will allow the epoxy to be spread a little more through the fibers as well. So just pressing it down nice and gently. Alright, so we're going to leave that now for at least half an hour for it to set before doing the second section.